It was supposed to be a peaceful morning jog, the kind that clears the mind and prepares you for the day ahead. But as she laced up her sneakers and stepped into the quiet suburban park, she had no idea her presence would trigger something so ugly, so unnecessary, that it would leave her questioning the very system she had dedicated her life to. "Hey, you. Yeah, I'm talking to you," the voice barked from across the path. A tall, burly police officer in a crisp uniform stomped toward her, sunglasses perched low on his nose, his expression dripping with disdain. "What are you doing here?" Her heartbeat quickened, but not from the jog. She'd been here 100 times before. It was a public park. Anyone could be here. She didn't respond immediately, unsure if she should engage. "You deaf? Or just ignoring me?" His tone sharpened, and his presence loomed closer. People around them stopped, eyes darting between the officer and the woman standing her ground. The morning air grew thick with tension. "I'm just running," she replied, her voice steady but tinged with disbelief. "Is there a problem?" "A problem?" He let out a sharp laugh. "Yeah, there's a problem. You don't belong here." The words hit harder than she expected, each syllable drenched in a venom that felt all too familiar. "Excuse me," she said, her voice firm but calm, her hands steady at her sides. She could feel the eyes on her now, strangers who didn't intervene, who didn't question. "You heard me," he spat, stepping closer, invading her space. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in this park. You match the description." Suspicious activity? She knew exactly what that meant. Her skin prickled under the weight of his gaze. "You mean jogging?" she asked, her tone sharpening. The officer's jaw tightened. "Don't get smart with me. ID now." She reached for her phone instead. "I'll record this." "Thanks." That's when the shift happened. His hand darted forward, knocking the phone to the ground. The crash silenced the murmurs of the small crowd gathering nearby. "You think you can talk to me like that? You're nobody." His voice boomed as he raised his leg, preparing to kick her phone. Or maybe worse. Time slowed, but before his boot met its mark, she moved swiftly, precisely, grabbing his foot midair. She twisted sharply, sending him off balance and stumbling back. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The officer's face turned a deep shade of crimson as he scrambled to his feet. "You're under arrest," he shouted, reaching for his cuffs. She stood firm, pulling out her badge with the ease of someone who'd done it countless times before. "No," she said, her voice cold, controlled, and unwavering. "You are." The color drained from his face as his eyes locked on the emblem of authority she held. What is this?" "I'm an FBI agent," she said, her words cutting through the air like a blade. "And you've just made the biggest mistake of your career." Silence fell over the park, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze. The tables had turned in an instant. The officer, moments ago brimming with arrogance, now stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing without sound. But this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The humiliation he had tried to impose on her was nothing compared to what was coming, because she wasn't just any agent. She had the power, the evidence, and the determination to expose the rot festering beneath the surface. What led this man to act with such blatant disregard for decency? And how would the system he so confidently abused react when confronted with someone who refused to stay silent? What happens next is a story of resilience, justice, and an extraordinary reckoning that will leave you questioning everything you think you know about accountability. At Plow of Twist, we stand firmly against all forms of racism, discrimination, and prejudice. To every Black viewer watching this, know that your voice matters, your experiences matter, and you are deeply valued. This channel is a safe space where stories seek justice, celebrate resilience, and inspire change. Now let's dive into a powerful and gripping story that reminds us of the strength in standing up for what's right. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to support these impactful narratives. Enjoy the story, and thank you for being here. The crisp morning air carried a faint scent of freshly cut grass and damp earth, the kind of atmosphere that invited solace and reflection. It was the one part of her day where she could escape the chaos of her career, the relentless pace, and the endless expectations. Special Agent Maya Carter had developed the habit of running at dawn, her way of clearing her mind before diving into the demands of her job at the FBI. She had chosen this park intentionally, a quiet suburban retreat just outside Atlanta where the only sounds were chirping birds and the rhythmic pound of her sneakers against the trail. Maya, in her mid-30s, was a striking figure of strength and resilience. Her tall, athletic frame was a testament to years of training, but it was her eyes, sharp, alert, and unwavering, that revealed the core of who she was. Growing up in a modest home in Birmingham, Alabama, she had learned early on what it meant to fight for space, respect, and opportunities in a world determined to underestimate her. Her parents, both civil rights advocates, had instilled in her an unshakable sense of justice. This sense was what propelled her through college, the grueling Quantico training, and into the elite ranks of the Bureau. Maya's career was her pride, but it came with sacrifices. Her long hours left little time for relationships, and though she maintained a close bond with her family, there were moments she felt the weight of isolation. The world she navigated wasn't always welcoming to someone like her, a black woman in an overwhelmingly white, male-dominated field. But Maya didn't ask for acceptance. She demanded respect, and her reputation as a relentless and fair investigator preceded her. The suburban park she frequented was a deliberate choice. It was far enough from her downtown apartment to feel like a getaway, and it offered a quiet space to collect her thoughts. The park itself was sprawling, with winding trails flanked by towering oaks and clusters of azaleas in bloom. At its heart was a modest lake, its surface glassy and still in the morning light. It wasn't uncommon for locals to greet one another with nods or small waves, but Maya preferred to stay in her lane, focused on her run. This morning felt no different, at least. At first, she stretched near her car, adjusting her earbuds and tying her laces with the precision of someone who thrived on routine. She noticed a few regulars on the trail, an elderly couple walking their golden retriever, a young woman pushing a stroller, and a middle-aged man doing lunges near the picnic area. Familiar faces in an otherwise unfamiliar town. Maya had moved to Atlanta a year ago, transferring to an FBI field office after wrapping up a lengthy assignment in New York. The move was meant to give her some breathing room, a chance to recalibrate after the intensity of her last case. But even in a city like Atlanta, with its rich black culture and history, there were reminders that racism didn't need an invitation to show up unannounced. One such reminder was Officer Greg Harding. Harding was a veteran of the local police force, a man in his late 40s with a stocky build, a perpetual scowl, and an ego as large as his jurisdiction. For Greg, the badge wasn't just a symbol of authority, it was a shield for his prejudices. Growing up in a small, predominantly white town in Georgia, Harding had been raised in an environment steeped in us versus them rhetoric. Joining the police force seemed inevitable for someone like him, and over the years, he climbed the ranks unchecked by a system that rarely scrutinized men like him. But Greg wasn't entirely immune to consequences. Recent complaints about his behavior, racial profiling, excessive force, and condescending remarks had put him under scrutiny. The department's high-ups had issued warnings, but they were perfunctory at best. Greg knew how to toe the line, pushing boundaries without crossing them blatantly enough to face real repercussions. He resented the oversight, viewing it as an attack on his authority. This morning, Greg was patrolling near the park, sitting in his cruiser with a cup of coffee and a simmering irritation. His personal life was in shambles. A messy divorce and a strained relationship with his teenage son only added fuel to the fire of his discontent. He didn't like this part of town, didn't trust the types of people who frequented the park. When his radio crackled with a report of a suspicious individual matching a vague description, black female, mid-30s, athletic build, Greg perked up. He didn't need much to act on. He'd find someone who fit the bill. He always did. Maya, oblivious to Greg's presence, started her jog. The rhythmic cadence of her steps and the steady beat of her music provided a momentary escape. She followed the trail past the lake, feeling the tension in her shoulders begin to release. She didn't notice the police cruiser parked just beyond the trees. nor the way Greg's gaze locked onto her as she passed. Harding stepped out of his vehicle, adjusting his belt as he watched her. His boots crunched against the gravel path as he approached, his hand already resting on his radio. Maya felt him before she saw him, a shift in the energy around her, the kind that made her instincts sharpen. She slowed her pace, pulling out one earbud as she turned to face him. "Ma'am," he called out, his tone curt and authoritative. "Hold up a second." Maya frowned, her chest rising and falling with measured breaths. "Can I help you, officer?" she asked, her voice calm but edged with caution. Greg sized her up, his lips curling into a smirk. "We've had some reports of suspicious activity in the area. Mind telling me what you're doing here?" Her eyebrows knit together in confusion. "I'm running," she said, gesturing to her attire. "Like everyone else here." "Is that right?" he said, taking a step closer. "You got ID on you?" Maya blinked, taken aback. "ID? For jogging in a public park? Don't get smart with me." Greg snapped. "Just show me your ID, and we won't have a problem." The exchange drew the attention of a few bystanders, their eyes darting between the officer and the jogger. Maya felt the weight of their stares but kept her composure. "Officer, I'm not required to carry ID while running," she said firmly. "Is there a reason you're singling me out?" Greg's face hardened. He didn't like being questioned, especially not by someone like her. "Look," he said, his voice lowering but losing none of its edge. "You can cooperate, or I can make this a lot harder for you." Maya's jaw tightened. She had faced this kind of treatment before, too many times to count, but she also knew better than to escalate the situation. Still, she couldn't shake the burning sense of injustice simmering beneath her calm exterior. The stage was set, and both players stood at the precipice of a confrontation that would unravel in ways neither of them could foresee.